Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. And today I know you thought we were going to be hanging out to talk about Code 8, but no. Jim and I went and I'll put a link somewhere here. We went for a spoiler-free review. We went and checked out See How They Run. We had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And so that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. Let me pull up my notes here because I always have notes. There we are. Okay. See How They Run. Here's the log line from IMDb. In the West End of 1950s London, plans for a movie version of a smash hit play come to an abrupt halt after a pivotal member of the crew is murdered. Anyway, See How They Run. It's a comedy whodunit, follows an Inspector Stoppard, which I think might be a play riff. We'll get into that later. Played by Sam Rockwell, and his overeager aide, Constable Stalker, played by Saoirse Ronan, as they go to a play of The Mousetrap, actually a play written originally by Agatha Christie, based on a short story of hers, which is yet to be published. More on that later. And there's, of course, been a murder, and they've got to find out who done it. Anyway, directed by Tom George, written by Mark Chappell, stars, of course, Sam Rockwell and Saoirse Ronan. It also stars Adrien Brody, Ruth Wilson, Reece Shearsmith, Harris Dickinson, David Oyelowo, Shirley Henderson, just to name a few. Let's take a look at the social nutrition checklist. Wouldn't qualify for a reframe stamp. Definitely was union made. Didn't pass the Bechdel test, and notwithstanding a couple of interesting scenes, I would not call this a class conscious film. Back to here, and I want to talk about historicity. This is actually fascinating. I won't say too much because it would give away some of the film. We're not in the spoiler zone yet, but a lot of what goes on in this film is definitely informed by The Mousetrap. It's an interesting note. It's one of the here's an interesting note on The Mousetrap. Part of the deal she had is that the short story could be published once it stopped playing in London. Once it was no longer playing theatrically, they could publish the short story. It was part of a collection. It still has yet to be published in the United Kingdom. It has been published everywhere else. I believe it's called The Mousetrap and Other Stories. But anyway, this comes up as a kind of as a plot point later. What else? I think that's about it. There is a link in the description regarding to the Mousetrap, Wikipedia article to the Mousetrap. So go check it out. With that out of the way, I think it is time to bring on my co-host with the most, the man, the myth, the legend. I believe his name is Mr. Jim Chaboyko.
Hi, folks. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing, my friend?
Great. Yeah, just getting used to the last few days of summer here, because it's still technically summer, and otherwise enjoying the 7:30 sunset. And realizing how spoiled we are during the high months of July and August. But anyway, no, it's all good.
Excellent.
It is all good, and I had an encounter with a bear this afternoon that that made me sort of appreciate everything else in life. So bring on winter. I'm ready for it.
Very cool. Very, very cool. We've got a great show. Let's jump into it, Jim. And notwithstanding, since we have a spoiler-free, and again, I'll put a card up. We do have a spoiler. We did do a parking lot reaction. We got a spoiler-free review out. Why don't we just jump right into the spoiler zone?
Certainly, yeah.
All right. And with that out of the way, Jim, do you want to make a few quick comments regarding the craft?
Yeah, I mean, big cast. Not all of them are super well known to us. There might be some English TV actors and such, or up and comers. But otherwise, I thought, Sam Rockwell, a little bit lower key than we're used to seeing him. I thought he did very well with his role. Saoirse Ronan as well was gung ho as her sort of overeager young policewoman, I thought David Oyelowo. Geez, I always get this his name. I got to get better at this, but anyway, he did a really good job as the writer. Adrien Brody, it was also pretty awesome. I felt that they used him just the right amount because he played sort of a hateful character and a little more, it would have been grating, but he had sort of a nice bit of presence in there. But I thought it was well done. It looked great with the costuming and everything. It was very much a period piece, early 50s in London. And, you could sort of
craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of costuming.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No. But so I thought they did a good job as well. Just the look of it too. You had all these kind of pops of color and stuff, and I mentioned it in the shorter one that we did. It had sort of like a little bit of a Wes Anderson feel, which appeals to me, but not too over the top with that stuff. Just sort of certain stuff with the car specifically, the little baby blue police car that they
especially
had,
near the end.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think, like, some of their shot choices in that, was that a Wes Anderson thing? Or is Wes Anderson so theatrical and these folks were doing theater?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly like it, but it just sort of reminded me, and because I'm a fan, the Tom George, I did a little bit.
Hey, it's DMG.
Oh, hey.
And on the screen.
Wow. How'd you manage that?
Apparently there was a typo. It was on me. Anyway, continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
Just about whether it was purposefully made to look like Wes Anderson. I don't know if that's the case, but it's a young filmmaker. I think he's only got 2 or 3. This Tom George. I think he's only got 2 or 3 things to his name, credits to his name. So who knows? It could just be an influence, but it looked great. Like I sort of really dug what they did with certain shots, and like I said, when they get out of the city and go to the end, they go to the manor at the end. That was something else too.
Very cool.
Nice change of scenery.
Yeah.
How about you?
Myself, I cannot. I have a soft spot for this film. It's only grown softer over the last couple of days. We saw it Thursday night, right?
Yes.
And I was going to take some water, but I think I'll have some tea.
Uh-oh.
I really enjoyed myself with this flick, Jim. I thought it had it had a good look. It had color while still kind of what we all kind of assume is 50s London, right? It was certainly warm. Theatrical in its production design. They totally committed to the 50s bit. Even the but even like I was saying earlier, like some of their shot choices, some of the sets and that, they never really went for.
Sorry.
Here, sneeze away
Sneeze.
there, Jim. Sneeze away.
I think it's the
That's what
first
I have
time
a mute.
Yeah.
I've got a mute button. Heck, you have a mute button. Anyway,
Oh,
back
yes.
to what I was saying there. Yeah, I think everything sort of fit. It had the right tone. It had a theatrical tone, and it was warm and had a nice soft feel to everything, including the cinematography. It was dark, but not in a... This mic pretends it's a Shure SM7B. The Shure SM7B is very much a radio mic, FM radio, Q, CBC. It's not the radio they use on NPR, but it's when you hear that tone, you think NPR. And I think this film, on its craft, even its performances, they are theatrical, yet they are reserved, if that makes any sense. It has every set piece has a theatricality and a proscenium arch feel without it feeling like a sitcom. It's not a burlesque.
Yeah.
It's legitimate theater. Yeah, I was very impressed with its production. The craft is solid. Yeah. I'm not saying that's how everyone felt. For example, DMG is not the only one out there. He says, anyone else get a good nap to see how they run? So I guess we have an idea of how DMG felt. But apparently it was the cure for insomnia, at least his insomnia. Let's, now that we got, I almost think it's the least important part, as long as all the craft is done competently. And I think this is beyond competent. But as long as this is done well, it's really about the story, and how did that work? So with your permission,
certainly, yeah.
Let's jump into that. What I found fascinating, Jim, is as I read about the mousetrap, because I've never seen it. It was not on my. I was not one of the 10 million who sat through it.
Yeah,
when I've been to London. I don't know about you, but I read the plot of the mousetrap and I'm like, it's as ridiculous. I don't think they were making fun of it. They're really no, the mousetrap's dumb. It's all ridiculous. They're pulling everything out of their ASS, and that in the end, the person who did it, it's like, well, that's fucking out of left field. Not Agatha Christie's best work. What do you think? Is that my take on that?
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. The movie today was that the ending actually the ending for this one, not the mousetrap, but the ending for this one, based on sort of the events around the mousetrap, it was good. Like, it made sense. It gave you the clues. It sort of set it up nicely. It wasn't one of these BS kind of, well, he had a ticket for this in his right pocket and he's left-handed or whatever. Those sort of really tight, like, for me, mysteries can be, if you have too much of an academic approach to it, they can just be tiring. Like, they're just like, and they're very sort of not soulless, that sounds harsh, but it's machinery, right? You're just watching a bunch of gears in motion. But so I thought this one, the mystery was pretty good, and it made, like, I wasn't shocked, like I wasn't like, come on, angered by who turns out to be the actual murderer. But the other thing too, and I would say this to DMG, is that seems to me to be a very different movie. The first half of the movie and the second half. The first half, it is a little bit sleepier, is a little bit slower. I think it almost lulls you into a sense that it's going to be a typical thing. Even the jokes are more pun based at the start. Saoirse Ronan's character makes a joke about the murder being staged, because they're in a theater, haha. And it's that kind of thing, and those kind of disappear, and the jokes actually get sharper and funnier as the movie goes on. So I think it sort of lulls you into a little bit of a state of, oh, this is just typical point A to point B kind of mystery making, rather than what it is. It turns out to be kind of a fun meta approach to the whole thing.
What do you think? Some of that is because it almost veers into, and I really meant it with the title. Is it a parody or is it a satire?
Yeah,
it's definitely a parody.
Yes.
And for those folks who have, Jim and I had a discussion, but to give you a very, very short version, parody takes it's a style. I wouldn't call it a genre. I would call it a style of storytelling, or a path to a story. They'll take a standard genre like the whodunit. And sometimes it's a specific movie. Sometimes it's the whole genre. Galaxy Quest, I think we talked about that a number on our parking lot review, Jim. You had brought that up. That is as much a parody of Star Trek, all the films, and all science fiction of that style, right? Airplane, we're parodying all those airport movies, sometimes with the same actors.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they look at all the genre expectations and they twist them to make fun of them. But, and I think it comes through in this, there's a love of it. And so I think it's parodying both the Mousetrap and whodunits, especially theater whodunits. Like some of the lines, it was, and I am and apropos of nothing, I am a magistrate.
Yeah.
and this is where I'm wondering, and DMG chime in on this too, is part of what's going on here a bit of satire? The actor, who's, oh, really? Where's that limp from? The war, eh? Do you mind if I use that? And then later, I hope you don't mind my my limp. I got it in the war. Like, what?
That's not in the script.
What? But like a gentle satire, or is is satire too strong a word for this film?
Well, I mean, it could be making fun of the dramatic arts as a whole. Satire, as I understand it, sort of criticize. It's a way to criticize maybe bigger issues like society or war or what have you. But I mean, I guess you could probably make the argument that it's criticizing, that it's poking at forms of drama and expression and
and again, Jim, like I don't want to I don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for, I don't want to, how do I put this, damn it I don't want to fudge. I'm trying to, while I even try to have this conversation with you, as I try to play with
multitasking.
As I'm trying to multitask, I want to make sure that everyone could see DMG's comment about Sam Rockwell's accent, which is more of a craft comment, but anyway, where the hell was I? I can't remember. Where were we?
Satire.
Right, satire. Yeah, you know what? I am being, it's a little too strong. It's more a gentle parody. Because at the end, they're not, satire has a different kind of point. A parody is, let's not take ourselves too seriously here.
Yeah.
That bit where it's, we're actors. This is the theater. We're not trying to exploit the truth, but reveal it.
Mhm.
And she delivers it so like low key, but it's kind of, it's a poke. It's a poke at all actors. I'm thinking it's kind of like The Good Place and Vicky and her process, because acting
Mhm.
is reacting, and reacting is just being. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It's funny when I was sort of looking at a list of spoofs or parodies of, just to sort of, come up with a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of looked at a big list. I had it ready, and then when we did that little film, I forgot everything, including the entire works of Mel Brooks. Is pretty much strictly because all he plays with genre like almost all the time. Not every movie,
That's a
but
great point, though. If you think
mhm,
of Mel Brooks, though, um, I'm thinking of Blazing Saddles.
mhm.
I think that was as much, I think that was satire. He wasn't out to poke gentle fun at the Western. He was
Yeah,
out to kill it.
yeah,
He was
yeah.
out to make a point like that, as effing funny as it is.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's a satire of that genre, and how that genre is really built on a bunch of racist assumptions
Yeah.
and racist tropes and racist history, etc. So, whereas this, it's like at the end of it, you're not saying, "Yeah, theater really does have to die."
Yeah, yeah. No,
Even
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
end, they still go watch the Mousetrap.
yeah.
They go
And then
still, they
there's
sit through the Mousetrap.
there's that line that we're being updated by the sort of the narrator, and he says, to this point in the history of theater, over 10 million people have sat through the Mousetrap, and the one producer's constantly talking about how boring it is and how much he wants to pump it up, which was another genius thing. Which
Oh,
they basically took the Adrien Brody's storyboarding, and he had these ridiculous suggestions, which turns out to be the last act of the
they
movie, to almost
foreshadow.
to a yeah, almost to a T. So,
Yeah,
and that was a brilliant little bit too. I thought that
yeah,
was super fun, and so you knew what was coming, and there's that anticipation of what's going to
yeah,
happen
yeah.
too. So that's
But at the same time, it's still achieving the gag then. If we
yeah,
never saw it, like, in a way, they talk about Chekhov's gun. You pulled out the gun, you have to fire it. Here, I'm like, you didn't have to. You did not have to fire the gun the way they fired the gun, even though they literally have drawings of it. Like, it's
yeah,
just, it's a. I mean, I appreciate DMG wasn't his taste, but I think any writer, screenwriters must be, especially British screenwriters, even the old tired wizened hand, the cop who's like, who is in a way, because whodunits or whydunits, I agree
mhm.
100% with Blake Snyder. It's
Oh yeah,
about finding the motive, you know,
mhm.
and unlike in this one, and even the Mousetrap, most of Agatha Christie's, that's kind of her thing. Everybody's got she gets a cast of characters who all have a good motive.
Mhm.
Um, anyway,
I
yeah,
quick
I
aside,
bet you a lot of writers are just like, oh, this is my
yeah,
cup of tea. Sorry, quick
quick
aside.
quick aside. I was looking at the Globe and Mail business section. Globe and Mail, for those who don't know, is considered Canada's national newspaper. Really, it's
Well,
Toronto, but anyway,
I was going to
uh,
say the Globe and Mail
yeah,
feels it's Canada's
it
national
feels it's
newspaper.
yeah. That's a good distinction. They had a story in their weekend business section that said, um, Agatha Christie returns, the return of the tontine, which is
Oh
one of
my.
those which is one of those groups that if somebody dies, then the rest of them get a share and that kind of thing. But it's this
Everybody
whole
chips in.
super earnest look at tontines, which they discuss in The Simpsons, when all of a sudden Mr. Burns and Abe Simpson know each other. But anyway, I thought that was kind of
when they could all become rich like Nazis.
Yes. Yeah. And they specifically mention Agatha Christie in it. But there's a couple other points about this movie in the story that I thought were kind of interesting, little details that I think we'd message each other about. And it's the character development. So at the same time, this movie achieves something kind of interesting. It has the, it has all the meta features of it. It's poking fun at itself while it's playing. But at the same time, they managed to give a little bit of depth to Stalker and Stoppard, Saoirse Ronan's
Stoppard,
Constable.
Tom Stoppard.
Yeah. But Stoppard, they show him at one point, he's pretty much a drunk, and he's got a war wound, and they don't overemphasize this stuff. They just show that he drinks himself into a stupor most nights, but he's working on jigsaw puzzles, all these things that are sort of geared toward children. It turns out that he had his marriage dissolved on him while his wife was pregnant. So he made a crib at one point.
Pregnant
with somebody else's baby. Yes.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of frozen in place a little bit. And she kind of is too. She lost her husband in the war, which was 7 years previous, lives with her mom and has two children. We only see, a couple flashes, but it's just enough to give it a little bit of depth that you typically don't get when all the characters in a mystery resort to being sort of gears and cogs in the machinery. So I thought that was quite good as well. And I just did you think that was? I thought it was quite heartening. Anyway,
I agree. Like, it gives everyone a bit of you start to care about the characters.
Mm.
You begin to care about the characters. You also see their foibles, their little foibles, corruptions, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Stalker, who, as much as she's a wonderful character and you like her and you're rooting for her, she's a bad cop. He is forever like, whoa. It's like, holy tunnel vision, Batman.
Yeah.
If she doesn't calm down, she's going to be throwing, case closed. I think even some of the petty manipulations in the cast and the producer in that, I was promised that part. The studio needs something, and there's the sleazy director going, and this is all stuff that happens. The interesting note, actually, another interesting historical note. So, of course, a lot of these players are playing actual people who played Trotter, the character Trotter, which was played by for crying out loud, bear with me here. Just
the mousetrap character, Trotter.
Not the mousetrap character. Yes, the mousetrap character Trotter in the film. See how they run. Just a sec. Just got to bring up that cast list again.
Yeah.
Just got to bring up and so many films, because it was also a different kind of play in the 40s by Philip King, and that had a movie made of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, where are we here? Okay, here we are. So, come on. So Harris Dickinson plays Richard Attenborough, the actual actor, because Richard Attenborough was the one who was the first Trotter when the Mousetrap debuted in the West End. The woman he is Sheila Sim, played by Pearl Chanda. Sheila Sim is or was Richard Attenborough's spouse, until they died. Like he died, of course, first. She died not that long after. But yeah, they were husband and wife then. Like a lot of these people existed. Actual movie producer. Adam Brody is like his character was, there's a couple characters, of course, that are made up, but a lot of these people were the legit characters. You know, the whole idea that it has not, like that mousetrap. Yeah, millions did sit through it till 2020.
Yeah,
You know, it took a global pandemic to stop that play.
That's amazing. And I sort of wonder too about the other Easter eggs in it. We discussed at the same time that the murder in the play is happening, a good chunk of the police force has been called to an address known as 10 Rillington Place, which ended up being Richard Attenborough starring vehicle in the 70s, 20 years after the events of this film. And it's basically an early serial killer movie based on it's a true crime. Basically, a landlord was killing his tenants and foisting the blame on other people. But that, that's an Easter egg that's kind of interesting. And yeah, it makes me sort of want to go back and look at some Attenborough's works. The other thing I wanted to ask you about story too, I didn't get the sense that even though the two leads were single, that they were ever trying to hook them up at all.
I ditto, and I loved that.
Yeah,
I think even when there's that moment, which could have been like when she's putting him to bed, but she at no time does she, I have to mother him now, I will be the woman in his life. No, that's actually where she leaps to another conclusion. But she's got her own, she goes home to her children. Her mother is looking after her kids. She's got other shit to do. I don't think they ever once were like, oh, and then we'll put them together. They didn't. He is older, as much as, and I think you and I talked about this after, it's kind of hard for you and I mean, the first time I saw Saoirse Ronan in something was, actually it might have been, was she the little girl, grows into a woman, of course, in, oh my goodness, I cannot remember. Atonement.
I think, I know Juno Temple was in it from,
let's see.
Ted Lasso. Sorry, trying to do too much at once here, but I will look that up right now.
I'm looking at it now. Just a sec here. The way back Ariadne. You know what? Yes, she was in Atonement. So the first time I saw her was in Atonement. Of course, Hannah. For you and I, it's hard to think of her as as a grown-ass woman with kids or anything. I mean, of course, she's 28 now, so it's not like she's, in her 40s with 3 children, but, she is aged appropriately for, you're not going, what? You can imagine her as a young bride, a couple of kids, wartime. They even aged her up a little, I think, so you can kind of, they sell her.
Yeah. So we've been watching her for 15 years. That seems crazy.
That is, eh? And it also shows how, and I think this is hard for people, for all of us, to kind of get out of our expectations of a player. We first saw them in X and Y, and all of a sudden, well, that's what that person does, period. And anything else, I remember the hot take. This ridiculous take I had when Catherine and I looked at Kate,
Mhm.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and she's got to do more action films. It'd be great to see her more of this stuff. She's done a few. She had done The Fucking Thing before that. She had, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know what? Because the first couple I saw her in weren't action films. And so all of a sudden I don't see her that way, no matter how many times I've seen her that way and been impressed and happy with it, you know?
I think that's why certain actors certain actors choose certain roles. Like, Helena Bonham Carter's been in so many little delicate period pieces, and I think there's one where she's disposed of very violently. I won't give it away because it'll be a spoiler, but there's a very gory ending for her, and I thought, I wonder sort of if she thought, oh, finally, I get to go out with a bang or something like that, because you're so used to seeing a person in a certain light that it's probably fun for them to switch it up a bit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. What's the I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know. Was there anything else? What else do you think we were like? I got to go see this again. I may not need to go see it in the theater again. I'm glad I did. Glad I saw it when I saw it. But easily a great home theater experience.
Yeah.
I think this will be an outstanding film to watch again. Almost like Gosford Park or, but yeah, not as dark and, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
There's a bit of satire in that.
There was a
straight up commentary.
There were a couple other points that were kind of interesting. The role of the commissioner, is the one who ended up getting, the knighthood and stuff like that. This sort of like guy who's concerned with only the wrong things, what something looked like,
but honestly concerned about
it.
I want to make sure that this bullet misses me and hits you. Like, I loved that character. I loved his honesty.
Yeah.
Even I believe I'm owed an apology. Yes. Well, Constable.
Yes. Well, there's the scene too where she's trying to cover her for herself because she was going to approach him with something else, and then she kind of changes it. She says, "Can I get you a tea?" And he goes, and I thought it was kind of a nice moment where he goes, "You'll never make it anywhere if you're trying to serve all the guys tea."
Yeah.
I take 2 cream, 1 sugar.
Yeah. He's right. He's given her great advice, but it's like, well, you did offer, and you're in front of me now.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. It almost like proves it's the sting that proves his point.
Yeah. Tim Key as Commissioner Harold Scott. So I think that guy did a lot with just a few minutes of screen time. I thought that he was impressive too.
Do you think though that's also again a conscious choice on the filmmaker's part to allow some of these that could be just because I think that's one of the criticisms, one of the contemporary criticisms of The Mousetrap. Characters are unbelievable. They're just the magistrate comment, I got this in the war, like the over exposition. That was there was criticisms of that being made at the time. That it's like, what? I don't believe her. I don't believe him. He's the killer. What? And I'm wondering here, it's like, no, you know what? They're not going to be stock. They're going to hint at stock characters, but then in the end, they're a lot more full. Everyone's fuller than you would think. The sleazy Hollywood producer seems to have a real love affair. The harridan wife of his, is, not like usually they're portrayed as victims or horror shows, She's like, just a little weird, Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just not your sort of typical characters. I remember a few years ago, and I can't remember the production. My wife really loves mysteries, and it was MTC was putting it on at their big Manitoba Theatre Center for those
Yeah.
not from here. And it was midwinter. It was January, and they had the heat on way too hot, and you're sort of, because you came in from the cold, you're overdressed anyway, and it was this hot night at the theater. I said hot, not in the good sense,
Yeah.
and it was just this sort of turgid mystery, and I just thought, oh my god, I love theater when I get a chance to see it, but I just thought, oh, it could not end quickly enough for me. So that's sort of what I think of when I see something like this, as some drawing room cozy or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
But this movie actually was a lot sort of swifter than the things that the runs at mystery that it was portraying. So
It was.
so that was fun. Yeah.
It got moving. When it was rushing to the end, the denouement, you're like, oh, really? How is this going to play out? Killer twist ending.
Yeah.
Killer twist ending. Like almost like a shot across the bow of the actual mousetrap. This part, I won't. You know what? See the movie. If you haven't, oh shit, you should have. So screw it. I'm going to talk about it. We are in the spoiler zone after all. Here, let me put that back up one more time.
3, 2, 1, go.
To have, and this is actually, you know what? This is my hook into meaning, Jim.
Nice.
To have the end of an actual murder, like a third, a fourth murder, where it's actually a doddering Agatha Christie was like finally getting rid of her oaf of a
nasty butler.
Oaf of a butler. I'm just like, mwah, and that no one it's like, wait, did no one notice that? No one did. That's actually for just the audience.
Yes. Yeah.
And I fucking loved that. I thought it was just a nice little hook. And I do think this goes to meaning, but that said, what do you think? What were some of the things, if in your mind, they were saying what they were saying in the subtext of this flick?
I think they were sort of taking a look at they were taking a real shot at basically what's seen as classic theater for don't know who considers it classic, but if you say The Mousetrap, most people have an idea that it was a record-breaking run, that it ran for X number of performances, generations of people saw it live, and that sort of thing. It sat through it, and there's a couple other, I don't remember the exact quotes, but there's a couple other, and it's the Adrien Brody character who really disparages it. He says, have you read the script? He goes, oh, I don't need to. Basically, I know how these things work. But, I think it was really taking a shot. It sort of reminds me of a conversation I had about 10 years ago with, I was working at one of my jobs with a guy who sort of, we had similar tastes, and we would watch, some of the dramas on PBS and stuff. And I said, I guess I should watch this Downton Abbey thing. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, don't bother. And, I can see its charms for some people. Again, my wife watches it. I think it exists solely for the music. Yes, the music does all the heavy lifting, and it's pretty much a show, as Saturday Night Live said, about cleaning. But anyway, it sort of reminded me of that. Like the things that many people consider a classic maybe deserve to have a shot or two. Shot across the bow. Yeah, have a couple dings in the chin.
Well, and I think this is where, well, you and I obviously diverge from where DMG is coming at it from. This is, it's funny actually that DMG found this boring. in a way, it was like he was the Copernic of the audience. You know, what? But I agree with you, Jim. I think it is a gentle shot at those things.
Mhm.
It's also again, it is interesting about parody. They don't most whodunits. They're almost always like you can have a hard-boiled whodunit. You can have these cozies. I
Mhm.
think that's Agatha Christie. A lot of hers are considered cozies, like
Yeah.
um, but they're almost always um, you know what? The world ain't as dark as a hard boiled, or it just isn't, like it's like
Yeah.
we will suck all joy out of life with this film. And cozies, yeah, no one's this, I want to say picayune, but I don't believe I'm using that word correctly. Uh, Nothing's this cozy. There's no acknowledgement of human suffering.
Yeah. There's no existential, someone's been murdered. It's just, is that what you're sort of trying to say?
Yeah, but at this, well, and everyone else is suffering. All the folks there's almost always an overly simplistic motive,
Mhm.
to heighten the drama. Whereas here, because and I think this is not just good storytelling, but maybe a comment on a lot of these things, more of the meaning here, that these characters never feel real because you don't see their actual hearts, their actual pain,
Mhm.
their struggles. There's that moment, like you say, as it's there he is, he's half in the bag, he's got the liquor, he's making the puzzle pieces, there's the crib, and you're like, you feel for him. That gutted me.
Mhm.
So here's this soon to be old man, who's had everything, you know, his life, the rug was pulled out from under him, and he has not gotten back up. He hasn't found his footing yet, and all I can think is he's going to cut his hand off. Then there is Saoirse Ronan, the Constable Stalker, and there she is. She takes care of one man to get home to relieve her mother,
Mhm.
and she's looking at her kids, but you can also see she's tired as
Mhm.
she is patronized at the office and, all these other things, right? And I think that really has it, you feel these characters and any of the others, like even Ruth Wilson's character, the producer there, there's a
Mhm.
the Spencer lady, you know,
Oh, mm,
yeah,
what do they call it?
her
They,
charging her mother, which I think actually is a thing that
yeah.
some Hollywood type had. Is you charging your mother rent? Well, just gotta make her rent.
Chew. I was trying to think of the nickname they
Yeah,
gave her because
yeah.
it's short for
Even
Petulia.
though that they, even though that they all hate the mother.
Yeah.
Oh, she's come. she,
Yeah. Yeah.
even how welcoming her husband was.
Mhm.
All reports are that was where Agatha Christie's life really kind of turned up, was when she finally left her first husband, went on this adventure, met this guy. Everything started to really work out for her. Beyond the fame or the
Yeah.
that home that home life, and all this stuff. I think I think it's a theme for you and I, Jim. We have loved movies that may not have been the tightest plots, but if the characters were there, you know, by the end you're like, oh, that was a pretty good ride. And I think
Yeah.
maybe they are saying something there, you know? Of course, there's
Yeah,
some obvious ones. Yeah, you're right. He gets a medal for solving the crime. His boss gets a knighthood.
knighthood. Yeah.
It's just awesome. Stuff like that. We do
Mm.
have, you know what, before we move forward, Jim,
Sure.
we have some comments. We got some new folks. I want to show
Ooh.
off the gizmo. So, oh, look at this. The Brock Upside.
Hey.
Who, I will tell you folks, of course, on social media, I may have posted that I got my visa approved for my visit. I'm going on a trip in a few weeks. We'll talk more about that later. But I will be in Cairo and then on a cruise on the Nile. And then Cody, it's like, you're visiting the Well of Souls. And I'm like, I can't believe I didn't think of Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was planning this trip. Anyway, good to see you here, Cody. What else? Oh my goodness. DMG, boy, he really has a mean on for this flick. Apologies to the audience. The Kingsman isn't the worst Harris Dickinson movie of the year. This one is.
I actually thought he was way better in this. Like they actually gave him stuff to do. And I sort of liked his kind of his little portrayal of
DMG just hated everything about it.
Oh.
No. See more in the chat. Before we I think this is a good time to beg everyone for a like, a subscribe if you haven't already. A ring of that bell.
It almost got away from me.
Where was I? Anything else we're missing as far as this flick goes?
Check the notes. I think we'd had a little chat about whether or not there was, they put so much into the characters because they might bring them back, but I'm not so sure about that. It sort of depends on box office and that kind of thing.
Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah.
And let's get out of the meaning, and maybe first let's talk about what's the next movie. Mr. Jaboyko, what are we looking at next?
It's the end of the month, so we're going to look at whether or not something holds up, and that movie is Election.
Reese Witherspoon, Matthew Broderick.
That was good timing.
Dark classic.
Yes. You get to watch Nebraska in midwinter. That's always fun. So you're telling me no leaves and no snow. Great. What's the color palette? Brown and gray? Anyway.
It'd be I can't wait to watch this movie and kind of go, how many films do not predict jack, but they sometimes feel it. And I'm wondering if this movie's going to feel like it's predicted a lot of our current mess. Bob Roberts was like that too. Another 90s movie that had a dark view of politics.
Yes. I think that made our short list back in 2020 when we were doing all those political movies.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I think it's a good time for this movie, given that the American midterms are coming up.
Yes,
so it'll be
1999. Alexander Payne, who's gone on to do a lot of different things too.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right, let's get back to this. And sure. Jim, are we giving Mr. George a pass?
Just about DMG, I'll give him an A+. Just kidding. I'll give him a pass. Yeah, it was quite enjoyable. As I said, there's a lot going on here. It's it catches you a little bit halfway through. That it sort of, I think anyway, it changes up a bit, and it was a good watch, I think. How about you?
I agree myself. I think it was a good. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Now, of course, it'll come out on streaming. I'll watch it then, and we'll circle back.
Sure.
You know what? I think it's always interesting to me when you have such a divergent is this going to be one of those films where a small group or a large group, like a group that really loves it and a group that really detests it, and few people in the middle going meh,
Yeah.
like it really got under DMG's skin, and maybe even Cody's. Cody, when he said, "This isn't a review of A24's Pearl starring Mia Goth."
Well, that's also out this weekend, isn't it? I think,
there's a lot. I mean, what we're hearing, what did you were mentioning a couple of flicks. There's a few that premiered at TIFF. Will be rolling out on streaming shortly. We've got an embarrassment of film riches coming out as everyone ramps up for Oscar season.
That's true.
DMG does love her. Oh my goodness. Wow, he really hates this movie.
Good, because he's been cast in the sequel.
You know what? Cody, he's a big fan of Saoirse Ronan, so he'll probably give this movie a chance. And I think that's I envy you your first watch. All right. With that, we asked you to put a pin in it, and we're talking about sequels, I believe. Want to continue your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think they put so much time into the characters. Are we going to see them again? I think it would have to have like a huge amount of success, a la Knives Out, which is another one that's the sequel soon to come out about that one. So yeah, I mean, Knives Out was a huge hit, but I think this would probably be, I think it was fourth in the box office. Box office is really weird the last couple of weeks, but yeah, I guess it's a business, so that'll determine where this goes, though. But
no, you're right about that. Do we? Yeah, you know what? I'll be interested. DMG, chime in on this. Cody, love to hear your thoughts once you've seen it. I do think, though, and we talked about this in the parking lot reaction, I think it's kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
There is a history of these crime-solving duos, whether they're also love interests or not, long history of that. And I'm not going to lie that I wouldn't mind seeing these two together again. I thought they had a weird, cool chemistry.
Yeah.
That said, you'd really have to change what they're doing here. It all of a sudden it's like, okay, do they do another parody a la Airplane 2 or Naked Gun? Was it 44 and a half? 44 and a quarter?
Oh, yeah.
Like
the titles. Yeah.
Yeah. Or do they just kind of accept it's like, no, we've done our bit. We've had our fun. Let's go make other stuff. And does that just mean we need to see more of Saoirse Ronan and Sam Rockwell doing cool stuff?
Yeah. I was going to say something cool like a sequel to the In the Heat of the Night, but they call me Mr. Tibbs. So that would be a bad joke.
Yes.
But Phantom of the Paradise too. I'd watch that.
All right. Well, anyway, I think we're done. I hope everyone loves. You can see the format's changing a bit now that I can actually put comments up. You may see a few more things changing just in format. But thanks again to everyone. Cody, thank you very much for coming by. Cody from the Brock Upside. Friend of the channel, has a great channel himself. Go check him out. Of course, DMG, the guy we love to have on, so I can argue with him. Great to see you here, and thanks for chiming in. Both got great channels, both great friends of the show. Go check them out. And what else? Again, I guess let's talk about next week's movie one more time. We're going to be talking about, get that out of the way. We are going to be looking at Election, found on all the good streaming services. starring Reese Witherspoon. When did this come out?
99.
99.
23 years ago, yeah.
23 years ago. A young Reese Witherspoon.
Younger
And
Matthew
immediately where you go, holy crap, what a talent. And Matthew Broderick in the first of a long run of, he's like, I'm going to lean into being playing different roles. Because it was not who you see him in a role that you just, it blew my mind. You know, this broke my idea of who Matthew Broderick was.
Yeah, good point.
You know, a couple of announcements. Good for you. DMG Cody's now at 700 subscribers, and congratulations.
Wow. That's great.
Of course, DMG broke 500. We're at a few hundred. I just love that I can say we have a few hundred subscribers. You know, these guys have, several hundred, but that we can say we have a few hundred, I think is pretty cool. And that's thanks to all of you out there. All righty. With that out of the way, I think it's just time to say goodbye, everybody. Thank you all very, very much for coming out. And what else can we say other than goodbye, everybody?
Go Seahawks. Also enjoy the funeral.